You ain't going nowhere. Welcome to the Powell movement.
Welcome to another episode of the Powell Movement. I am your host, Mike Powell, and this week we have Ian McIntosh on the program. If you're not familiar with Ian McIntosh, well, go out and buy Tight Loose from TGR, and you will see his line called the Narwhal this year, which he won Line of the Year for, and it is the definition of tight loose. While Ian's able to pull everything together and stay on his feet, it is all over the place. It seems like it is really exciting to watch, as you don't know if he's going to be able to hold it all together, and at the end he does, and you can see when he comes through where all the other athletes are, Sage and everybody, their minds are absolutely blown with what Ian's able to do. And he does that every year. It's nothing new for Ian McIntosh. So the interview with Ian is great. He doesn't sugarcoat anything. He is a salt of the earth type of guy who tells it like it is when we're talking about his divorce, about his injuries, and anything else within his ski career. He's also one that likes to be a great role model for the youth, and you can hear him in the interview try to pull back on the bad words and make sure that he's creating a positive message for the kids out there. Ian's one of those guys who really defines what's going on in the big mountains this year, and every other pro skier looks to see what he is doing when the movies come out each season. So it's going to be great to talk to Ian, but first I want to thank my sponsors because they're the ones that made this show happen. They are Evo.com, DiecutStickers.com, Sierra at Tahoe Resort, and Spy Optic. Please check out their sites, go to the stores, buy their merchandise, do what you do. And now let's get ready for some Ian McIntosh. Ian, hello.
Mike, sorry, man. For some reason, my Skype wasn't working, but I found a coffee shop with Wi-Fi patched into their Wi-Fi, and now it's working. So,
where are you?
in the Whistler Village, picking up some skis off my buddy. He tuned them up for me. So
nice. Did you hear all the crazy ski news today?
what, with Armada or what?
Yeah, the Armada. Yeah. What do you think about that?
I think it's a great deal for the buyers, and it's too bad for Armada, but I think ultimately it'll probably allow the company to recover and reach its full potential because they've been struggling. So
I was just shocked at the $4.1 million. It seemed pretty low for a brand, but someone's stoked.
Yeah, they just had so much debt. I think they were just stacking it up and they just had no choice. We've seen this kind of stuff before. I mean, it was different when Rosinal almost tanked, but now they're back super strong. So it's all about ownership and who's running the company. And if you have a solid owner that's going to back a brand, then it has better potential, I think. And so I think they have a smart business model, and they'll hopefully help Armada reach its full potential. So
yeah, because I think potential for that is huge. I mean, I think when we saw them come out in 2002, it was a refreshing change from the big brands out there, although the big brands have a place. I'm getting a lot of crazy noise.
For me?
Yeah, it's coming from your end. It sounded like you were farting, though. So while that is funny,
my phone is also soaked from today, so I don't know if it's acting up.
It's been an amazing season all around for everyone I've talked to, and I would assume that you've had a pretty banger season this year, too?
Oh, my God, man. It's been a really good season for just soul shredding, man, because there hasn't been a lot of good weather as far as sunny skies, but there's been a ridiculous amount of powder days, so I've definitely been getting my fill, and yeah, I'm stoked, man. It's been a really fun winter.
So is it a lot more going out there without cameras because you know that the weather's not going to be good for shooting and you can actually enjoy yourself?
Yeah, I've realized over the years that you can spin your wheels and you end up burning yourself out just trying to get stuff done when the weather's not cooperating. So I'm more patient in my older age, and I just try and go out when it's good and take advantage when it's good and make the most of those days.
Yeah, I can imagine when you're in your 20s and things are first starting to happen for you that it's about charging and getting out there every single day. It doesn't matter what's overhead. And then you smarten up as you get older.
Yeah, you got to be hungry when you're young, trying to make a name for yourself, and you got to be hungry hippo guy. But when you get to my age and you've been doing it for this long, you know how to pick your battles, and you've learned from years of experience on what it takes to get things done, and you can focus on those things. So
Yeah, I think in looking at your career over the years, it's almost been like the more you've reeled it in and taken your time, the better results. You've had amazing results throughout your whole career. But the past few years, you might not be doing as much filming, but I think the product that's coming out is even better.
I'm almost 36 now, and I realized in this stage of my career, it's more beneficial to focus on content that's got a great story and some more substance behind it. Within that can still win line of the year or whatever it is, but more quality and story-driven content versus just quantity porn show.
Yeah, and I think when you were coming up in the whole scheme of things, at least in your early TGR days, the 2006-ish, content was a lot different back then. It wasn't edits online every day that people were pumping out. So as much content as you could get in a year, that's really all the fans had to see during the year. Now we can see a new edit every day from different people who want to try to do some things. Obviously, they're not skiing at your level, but it's just a totally different content game now.
Yeah, we're putting out content daily on social media channels and through media partners like TGR and through my sponsors' channels and stuff too. So it's a completely different world. Social media didn't even exist when I started this whole career, and it's changed everything dramatically for the better. I don't know, but it definitely allows people to be able to approach their winners differently and not necessarily have to have a big name film company to partner with to still be successful within the business.
It creates totally different channels, like you said, and you don't need that big film company. And the first person that pops into my head who just blows himself up, regardless of what they do, is Candide, where he doesn't need people backing him. He has people putting money into what he's doing, but he can put videos out on his own, and it's bigger than most movie companies. It goes viral.
Well, Candide's a special human, right? And so he has probably the upper echelon of success within that realm over anyone else for good reason. But there's a lot of opportunity. You see what Sean Pettit's doing now with Friendly Rippers, and there's just a lot of diversity out there. And yet there is still some pretty amazing ski film companies that are putting out great films every year that people are still showing up in huge numbers to watch. So for me, I'm more traditional in that sense. I love the ski film program, and I love having a solid media partner like TGR that I can just rely on to help me produce my content and do projects with, and they're going to get me a good following and a good viewing every time I work with them. So it just makes my life simple to have a partner like that. And they've always been family to me, and I'm always going to be family to them. And it's a great relationship. So
when I think about you in those movies, I'll dial it back to my childhood coming up. And when Big Mountain Parts came out, I just remember Seth Morrison, a lot of MSP movies back in the day. And every year I would look forward to what Seth was doing. Well, while I still would love to see Seth in a park, I would go buy that wherever. It seems like these days, the new Seth to me is Ian McIntosh. And I'm thinking, what's Ian going to do in his segment this year? And that's what I think before any of the premieres come out. You've stepped into that spot. You might not be willingly stepping in there, but it just happens based on what you've been able to do. But does that kind of give you the goosebumps knowing that an icon and a hero of yours growing up, you're taking his place?
Yeah, Seth was my hero. So to hear you say something like that is probably one of the biggest compliments I could get as a skier, and definitely gives me goosebumps to hear that. And that stokes me out, man. And the thing I love about this industry the most is there's room for so much diversity. There's so much diversity within our sport, so many different styles. Everyone's bringing something different to the table. And here we are at this day and age, and there's still room for a guy like me who's I'm nothing fancy. I'm just looking to charge big lines and charge them hard and charge them fast. And the fact that there's still room for that within this industry, and there's so much diversity, that's what I love about our sport. That's the beautiful thing about our sport. I hope we never lose the level of diversity that we have now within the sport.
There's so many different types of people. Just hearing you say the different types made me think about high school and how you stereotype people and put them in different buckets. And if I'm to stereotype you and look at your type of skiing, you're a linebacker who kicks the shit out of the mountain. And while some people are scared of the mountains, if the mountains could be scared, they'd be scared of Ian McIntosh, although that doesn't happen. But a big monster of, I don't want to say redneck, but mountain type dude who's pretty burly in the backcountry compared to Seth, who would be your emo punk rock. So totally different personalities, but really bring the same charging attitude to the mountains. And that's the beauty of skiing.
Yeah, exactly. There is some truth to redneckness within me. I grew up small town BC and grew up ski touring a lot with my parents and learning how to snowmobile at a very young age. And growing up in small town BC, it's super redneck, It's unavoidable in a lot of ways, especially growing up in a town like Invermere. But, over the years, I would say that while I still have those redneck roots, I've definitely changed a lot over the years. But yeah, man, I've been lucky. I grew up in the mountains. I grew up with parents who were amazing skiers and a family that were all incredible skiers. And I spent all my childhood at the ski hill or in the backcountry at a super young age and staying in backcountry huts. And that just developed my passion for the mountains and I think ultimately shaped the style of skier that I am. I never really was in an era of focusing heavily on throwing tricks. I was always just focused on skiing the mountain as fast and hard as I could. And yeah, catching air where I can, but more just focusing on charging hard. And that's always been my niche within the sport. And I've been able to carve out my name within the sport from simply just charging as hard as I can. And it's not like that's what I've been trying to do. It's just more that's who I am as a person. And so it was just natural.
Yeah, and I hear that definitely propagates to every part of your life is just that charging hard, whether it's at the bar, it's with your buddies, it's on the hill, it doesn't matter. You're going big and having fun. And in terms of your ski career growing up, was there any race in your background growing up? Because a lot of people your age do have a race background.
Yeah, I had a lot of racing in my childhood. A bunch of the people that were on my race team or made it to the national World Cup level. I definitely have always thought like, wow, if I stuck with ski racing, maybe I could have got to that level. But I'm a powder skier, first and foremost, and my parents taking me into the backcountry at a super young age. I started to drift from ski racing and wanting to ski POW every day with my buddies. And so that eventually led to me quitting ski racing, and I was actually going to pursue a lifestyle of guiding, and then just kind of got sidetracked into this whole pro ski career thing. I had some people spark some ideas in my head that I was capable of achieving it, and then it got me dreaming towards that whole spectrum and pursue that lifestyle. And it's an amazing lifestyle. Everything in moderation. You're right. I'm a hard charging person. I'll go hard at the bar, but I also know to keep my head on straight. And I might be the last guy standing, but I'll still be totally coherent guy and able to carry a conversation with you. I like to keep it tight loose for sure, but I definitely have a good tight to counteract my loose.
Okay. I like that. One thing that you said is that you spent a lot of time in the backcountry as a young kid, and I've done a lot of these interviews. It didn't seem like too many people's parents were taking them in the backcountry at a young age like yourself. And was there any backcountry safety protocol that you were learning as a kid, 8 to 12 years old, that most kids wouldn't have gotten, that given you a little head start to other people? Or was it just, we're heading out there and hopefully things will be okay?
My dad was a super avid, my dad had guide training and had all the training and knowledge to teach me. And I had a lot of cool connections within the Kootenays growing up. My dad's best friend from high school ran RK heli skiing. And so I used to be able to, sit in on guides meetings at age 10 and then go out in the heli early season with those guys and dig heli pads and ski some of the new runs and dig snow profiles and look at the snow. And so from 8 years old, I was digging snow pits and studying the snow and learning about how to stay safe in the mountains. And so I attest a lot of that knowledge that my dad and those early years that I had that they passed on to me is why I'm still here today.
Yeah, so you were born to do this. This is no fluke by any means. At 8 years old, you're digging pits. It was only a matter of time before you would find a career at some point in the ski industry, whether it was being a professional skier, which is the best career to have, which you took, or some other path like a guide or something else. This was your future, whether you liked it or not. You were born into it, and it was your life.
Yeah, and I loved it. At a young age, my dad was like, all right, I can't pay for you to be a hockey player and a skier, so you got to choose. And I loved the independence of skiing and how fast you could go and the exploration vibe of skiing, and the mountains almost seem endless out there and all that sort of aspect. So it was a no-brainer for me at a young age to get rid of hockey and just focus on skiing. And yeah, I guess in a lot of ways I was born into this and meant to follow this path. And my pro ski career has probably end up being a 15 to 20 year break from pursuing my guiding lifestyle, but I'm sure, eventually I'll circle back around and complete that dream that I had when I was a young kid as well, and take on more of a guiding role in my later years of life.
Well, it seems like the natural progression, especially to how your skiing has evolved and you're moving towards human-powered, or you've moved to human-powered, and the next progression there is to do guiding in that respect. But one story I heard, and I don't know if it's true, so I figured I'd ask you, was there was a race when you were growing up, and it was a powder day, and you jumped out of the snow fencing to ski some powder and got DQ'd. Is that true, or just a random made-up story?
That sounds pretty random made up. There's some basis to that story, but it was more just when I was a kid, we would go to a spot like Whitewater Resort in Nelson, for a slalom ski race, and it would snow 2 feet. And a bunch of us would miss our start time. We'd had great bib numbers. We were supposed to start near the front of the pack, and which would have led to much easier chance at good results instead of skiing in the ruts at the end. But we were out skiing Powell all day, and we'd show up at the end of the race and have to race at the back of the pack because we missed our start. And we'd still podium half the time or do super well. And I think for my parents, they were just like, Ian, you're just not focused enough on this racing thing. You seem more like you just want to shred Powell. And so let's go to the backcountry and let's just go to the huts and let's go touring and get into that whole realm. And that was, spoke to me much more. And that's kind of what led me into wanting to be a guide. And then some people sparked the idea, like I said, in my mind that I should actually pursue this lifestyle, which I'm super thankful for, because to all the kids out there, Chris Davenport said this to me once. He said, Mac, you'll never get rich becoming a pro skier, but you'll live as though you're a millionaire. And it's super true. We travel the world. We stay at these amazing places. We experience this amazing world of skiing in the mountains and seeing the mountains all over the world. And we're rich on life money. And that's really all that matters.
Yeah, I would think you're rich the second you get on the airplane. You fly somewhere, you have handlers picking you up, taking you places, and want to show you the best spots that their area has. That's a pretty cool thing.
Well, yeah, and I mean, like, leaving home is hard to do because it's dumping and it's super sick and I love where I live. And then when I'm away, I'm like so psyched to be where I am. But when I get home, I'm like, yes, I'm home and it's still dumping and it's so sick where I live. So that's called rich on life money right there. Like, doesn't matter where I go in the world. Home's the best place in the world for me, but I get the opportunity to see all these amazing, cool places all over the world.
Did you travel much when you were growing up? Did you get out of Canada? Because I know there was a big trip once you got out of high school. I think you went to the 2001 World Heli Challenge in New Zealand. And I think that's where people put that idea in your head that you could be a pro skier or you could get a job within the ski industry. And is that the first big trip that you do, that you get out of North America?
Yeah, exactly. Like, basically how it worked, when I graduated high school, I moved to Fernie because that's where all my cousins, aunts, uncles, and a lot of friends lived. Shredded Fernie for a year, and then Kicking Horse opened the next year. So I lived the next winter in Kicking Horse.
Okay.
It was that spring that I sold my truck and my mountain bike and everything I had. And I wanted the eternal winter. So I went to New Zealand. Actually, that winter when I was in Golden working in Kicking Horse, I was tail guiding for Purcell heli skiing. So I got like 40 days in the helicopter that winter. And that's when I was really pursuing the guide lifestyle. And then went to New Zealand and got the idea to compete in the World Heli Challenge just for fun. Did super well. And a lot of the boys from Whistler that were crushing it in that comp were like, dude, come to Whistler. We'll film you. You'll be in ski movies. This is the life for you. And so I thought I'd give it a shot. And, as a Kootenai kid, we always hated on Whistler. We were always like, screw that place. Like, it's just a big tourist trap. But I've been here 16 years now, and there's no place I'd rather be. It's one of the sickest places to ski on earth. So
there's a reason it traps tourists. It's because it is awesome, and there's a lot to do there.
Yeah, there's a reason certain places get busy. But, as a local, as someone that was just shredding all day today, when there's no lift lines and there's a lot of days and majority of the days of the year that even Whistler is still super quiet and it's ski on every lift and you're skiing POW with your buddies every day. And yeah, sometimes at holidays or sometimes on weekends it gets busy, but that just means it's a great place to be and other people want to come experience it.
Awesome. Something I remembered, which I usually forget in every show and I have to do this afterwards, but I remembered it today. Are you a fan of stickers at all?
Of stickers?
Yeah, like you put them on your car, you put them everywhere.
You know what? I used to be like a big sticker guy, and now I tag my skis and my helmet with my appropriate sponsors, and I kind of leave it at that these days. When I was young, though, I was like super into stickers. I think it's part of getting older. You just a little less stoked on stickers.
The only reason I ask is because I love stickers, and I have a great sponsor who is a sticker maker.
Okay.
They're diecutstickers.com. So I was just asking. And for you or anybody else who's listening to the show, go to the diecutstickers.com website. Type in DCS15 as they are requesting a quote. They will get 10% off their sticker order. So I've known this company before they started. They make 70% of all the action sports stickers. And there's some badass dudes who are opening up an incredible mini ramp in their place. I don't know if you skate, but it's in Seattle. And it's the old K2 ramp, and it should be open in a few weeks. And it is amazing. So if you come down here, we'll get you on the ramp.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. And they're good people. I'm not a good person. I'm actually kind of terrible, but they're good people. And to skate the ramp, all you need to do, I think, is be a part of the industry and bring a can of food over. And they're going to be donating food to the homeless. And I'll probably be stealing it and bringing it to my house. But they'll be letting people skate as well. My one other sponsor I do have to talk about is Evo, and I'm sure you've been to Evo before.
Yep.
They have stores in Portland, Denver, Seattle, and they are the best online experience, in my opinion. Personally, if you're going to shop online, you go to evo.com. They're going to take care of you. When you check out at Evo, all you got to do is put Powell10 in your checkout code. You'll get 10% off, and they are an awesome shop right down the street from me in Seattle. I love them, but I love not talking about my sponsors as much and talking about other shit. So let's talk about you moving to Whistler. When you first got there, you had a 5-bedroom place to yourself, and it was just living in luxury?
Totally. No, it was funny. I basically had one buddy that had moved from Fernie to Whistler. Well, I had a couple buddies. Ryan Oakton was one of them, and another buddy, Matt Elliott, that had both moved from Fernie to Whistler.
I have a pair of skis signed by Ryan Oakton that are sitting right next to me right now from the back nine.
Awesome. Nice. That's awesome. That was kind of right when Oakton was blowing up on the scene too. And so they were my connections. And after being in New Zealand all summer, I kind of maxed out my credit card and I was in debt. So I worked my ass off that fall to get myself back together, but I still had no vehicle because I had already sold everything to go to New Zealand in the first place. So, I wasn't super money heavy, that's for sure. I was definitely bumming. And I didn't come to Whistler until like December 14th. And Matt Elliott was like, all right, dude, well, you can crash at my place until you find something. I'm going to go home for Christmas for 10 days. When he got back, I basically decided that I was moving into his closet because I couldn't find anything in Whistler. So I moved into one of his closets in the kitchen. It's kind of underneath the stairs and fit everything that I had in the world at that point. $200 a month. I worked at Summit Ski for like 4 hours a night for 4 days a week. My paychecks were like $250 every 2 weeks. I lived off nothing and skied every day. And I still look at that year as like one of the funnest ski seasons I've ever had. It just dumped every day and I didn't worry about a thing except for just going skiing.
Yeah, and I would think that in those types of situations, you might not be making a ton of money, but you have a ton of connections in town and you're able to drink if you want to drink. You're able to eat decent food if you want to eat decent food and shred every day. So when you look back on it, it's like, wow, that year was awesome. And I cleared like $6,000.
Yeah, and I've always been a super outgoing person. So I was able to develop friendships pretty quickly in town that benefited me. Like you're saying, you meet the right bartenders, you meet the right people that work here or there, and you're able to survive. You make it work. I get nostalgia when I see the same type of people as me that are first season in town. And for sure, their living arrangements are just complete crap and they're barely able to feed themselves, but they're having the best time of their lives.
Yep, that is living the dream and takes a young person who's hungry and wants to have a great time in life to be able to do that.
Exactly.
Yeah, if you don't have the right attitude, it's a pretty challenging thing to do.
Yeah.
Is this when you met up with the Pimpin' Frogs crew and you started filming for your first parts?
Yeah, the Pimpin' Frogs crew was filming local films at that time, and so I met up with them, started developing a lot of connections within the Whistler area and the Whistler scene. That kind of introduced me to filming. And at the same time, those guys were all still competing on the world tour. So they were taking me under their wing and showing me the ropes of the world tour. My first couple seasons, I would take a crack at like 1 or 2 comps on the world tour, the Whistler comp and maybe the Snowbird comp or one other. And I'd tend to do very well, but then I'd get into the finals and I'd go way too big and explode. Basically, at one point, P.Y. LeBlanc and Hugo Harrison pulled me to the side and they're like, dude, you have what it takes. You just need to ski at like 70 or 80%. Dial it down a little bit and stay on your feet and you're going to do well in these comps. And they were right. And I still give that advice to kids all the time. It's like, these comps, you're only going to do well if you stay on your feet every run, every comp, or at least a high percentage of them. And the only way to do that is by dialing it in a little bit so that you stick everything that you're doing on every run. And you got to take some risks, but knowing when to take them and putting yourself in a high percent chance to succeed is basically the best way. And once I started doing that, I started placing top 3 in the world all over the place. So
it's funny how team managers, while they might not be the greatest skiers in the world, know how to ski a contest. They just can't do it. But I used to remember telling guys, and it doesn't really even matter what type of contest, if there are 2 runs, you need to stay on your feet on the first one. And if you don't stay on your feet on the second one, you'll get a score that might get you in the finals. But if you land your first run, that's when you can take a lot of risk on your second one and go for the win. But a lot of people always take a lot of risk and would blow up and not have the advice that you got and would never make it past that point.
Yeah, and it's the same thing if you get the opportunity to film. Your season's going to boil down to a handful of days where you crushed it. And if those days you go out and just charge way too hard and explode on everything that you try, you're going to have nothing to show for it. But if you start your season off and you get some stuff in the can, and then you're like, all right, now I've got like a base to work from, then you can start taking a little bit more risk and throwing yourself out there a little bit. But if you just throw yourself like 100%, 3 sheets to the wind every time you're out there, you're never going to succeed. And bottom line, in a comp or in a film, is nobody remembers the guy who crashed. They only remember the guy who either ended up on the podium or had the 6th segment. And the only way you do that is stay on your feet. So you got to find the balance.
That is the truth. As 2003, 4, 5 come around, you're competing in some contests. I would think some sponsors are coming around. You're hopefully out of the closet at that point.
That sounds bad. But yeah, I moved out of the closet after that first winter. We started getting some ski bum style houses where you're living with a bunch of roommates. And, you know, at one point I was living with James Heim and Dana Flair and just kind of moving around and still living the ski bum life, crammed into some tiny room of some Shempy house in Whistler. But things started to happen. Yeah, I started to get some sponsors. Basically, I paid for my way to travel the world for the world tour by just podiuming. You know, it was my motivation every time I went to a comp. I was like, I have to get in the top at least 5 to get any sort of money so that I could make it to the next comp. And that was basically how I supported myself those years. Went on the government ski team, Canada's version of welfare, I guess you'd call it. And that kind of helped as well, being on the government ski team, but just made it work those couple years, and then finally got the opportunity to go ski with TGR. And it wasn't until my first year, 2006, the season I filmed Anomaly with TGR, that I ever got my first contract that had any sort of money involved with it.
Okay. And you skied for free for a long time. And when I say for free, it's just not for money, but you're definitely getting a lot out of it. And in 2004, you were second on the Freeride World Tour, although I don't believe it was called that at that point. And then in 2005, you were third. And the tours combined and became one Freeride World Tour. I don't know what the governing body was called, but there was a shift in judging at that point in those tours. And one of the things that was pulled was aggressiveness, and I think it was put in its place was style, both very important, but your skiing is all about your aggressiveness, and I think your style is based off of that as well. And was that part of the reason that you decided not to continue with those kind of contests?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting how those contests influenced the skier I am today. They almost changed me in some ways. You know, I mean, in a lot of ways, I am the skier I always have been, but in some ways, those comps kind of molded me into the skier I am because they didn't warrant the risk of throwing a stylish trick off something back then. They rewarded more just huge aggressiveness. So if you're going really fast and big and stomping everything, that's how you're going to win a comp back in those days. And that really shaped the skier I was. And after a few years of competing like that, that just ended up being more what my focus was. And yeah, it's a different world now. I think it's changed for the better. I think the whole contest tour is better. They have better opportunity to ski in good snow conditions and in better locations with better venues. Back in my day, it was a lot of hard pack hucking.
It seems like it's still a lot of that, except for the other day in Alaska where it was perfect.
Yeah, I mean,
it just depends on the contest. You never know.
Yeah, it depends on the contest, but at least they're having more of an effort to keep these venues in the best conditions that they can be for that contest. And that was a bit different back in our day. We'd be hucking a hard pack in the fog to get the contest off because there was no weather days.
Yep. So at that point, you get an invite to try out for TGR. It's not like they're inviting you to be fully in the movie. They're like, hey, we want you to come down to Jackson. You're going to ski with some of the crew. And if we like you and we think your skiing's on point, you're going to be part of the movie?
Yeah, and I got to attest, there's a couple big factors there. TGR really didn't care about my contest results, to be perfectly honest.
I don't think anybody cares about the contest results except for maybe sponsors.
I know.
And the athletes themselves.
Yeah, exactly. And so they were more focused on the film part I did for Stimulus, for Rage and Team 13, and some of the other filming that I've done, and they liked my style. They felt like they needed a hard charger back in the mix with Nobis on his way out, and they were psyched to give me a try. I really got to throw it out to Dana Flair and Ryan Oakton for really helping me get in the door with TGR. But yeah, they basically called me and said, all right, come to Jackson. You can ski Jackson for the season. And if we like, you'll be in the movie. And not only did they not like, but they gave me the extra seat in the heli in Alaska that spring with Jeremy Jones and Sage and Victoria Jalouse.
And that had to be completely mind-blowing. I don't know if you had skied with Sage before, but Jeremy Jones, I'm sure, is one of those guys that you've put on a pedestal, and to sit in the heli with him before he had changed his style has to be pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, I mean, I always attest Jeremy to the snowboarder that had the biggest influence on me out of anyone. And Sage, I had been watching TGR films and wanting to ski with Sage for a long time. And fast forward 10 years later, he's one of my favorite people to ski with. And even though we have such different styles, we complement each other very well in the mountains. And Victoria, of course, too, because at the time she was one of the hardest charging female snowboarders on the planet. And I mean, for me, it was just fully eye-opening. That trip was really, really tough. We had some of the worst avalanche conditions I've ever seen in Alaska, and it was thin snowpack, and it was a really challenging trip. But nonetheless, it was an experience of a lifetime and kind of paved the way and opened my eyes to the potential in Alaska. I learned as much as I could off of Jeremy for the next couple of years, and then he passed the torch to Sage and I to take it from there and start calling the shots in Alaska. And that led to many, many more years of AK skiing.
One thing I almost forgot to do again, because I'm really not good with sponsors. It's my first time ever having people sponsor me. I know you are on Smith sunglasses and love them and have been on them for a long time. They are great. I am sponsored by Spy Sunglasses, and they have the Happy Lens. And if you're not familiar with the Happy Lens, well, it's science that's built into the lens that filters out UV lights, and it puts you in a better mood. It relaxes your eyes. It works, and definitely check out the Happy Lens. For listening to this podcast, Spy is going to give you 25% off your Spy order, $450 or less. All you need to do is input capital SPY, lowercase podcast, number 25 at checkout. And the good folks at Spy will give you 25% off your order. Ian, one other question. I know you love Whistler and you would never want to leave there, but if you did leave Whistler, have you ever skied at Sierra at Tahoe?
Yes, I have skied down there, and yeah, amazing place. Great place, full of great people. When the snow is good, it's, as good as anywhere. So yeah, a beautiful spot for sure.
Nice. So you heard that from Ian. For me, what I will say, which you might not know, is they have non-GMO snow.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, no GMOs in there. A lot of the places in the Tahoe area, they might be using GMOs. We're not really sure, but Sierra Tahoe is not, and they're a great place, and you've already been there. If you ever want to go back, you let me know. I'll get you whatever kind of lift tickets you need, and that's from the good folks at Sierra Tahoe.
Appreciate that.
Nice. Well, with TGR, you had segment upon segment upon segment. I mean, we talked about Tangerine Dream, the Couars and Anomaly. Narwhal, as of recently, you've won a ton of awards. And like I said, I look at you now when I think of movies that are coming out in the fall. It's what are we going to see from Ian this year? Who knows when that's going to change? But you are in that driver's seat position right now where a lot of people want to see what you're going to put together. But at the same time, your skiing has changed a little bit. And before I get into that, I should talk about 2011 because it was a crazy year for you. I think you're married at this point. So are you friends with your ex-wife or no?
We don't hate each other, but we never talk.
Okay. Well, I don't like her. I'm just letting you know that now. I've never met her. I don't know her name, but I do not like her. So I'm probably not going to speak too positively about her, but that's okay.
Yeah, we were actually toxic. It's funny, you look back in your 20s, your early 20s, and you think you know it all in the world, and you got the world figured out, but you're still just a kid. You're still just a baby. You really haven't seen or experienced shit. And for me, I had this beautiful blonde girl come into my life, and things got hot and heavy. It was super lusty, and we thought we were in love, and we thought we were going to be together forever. And she was American, trying to live in Canada, so we rushed into a marriage. And fast forward a couple years later, things were pretty toxic. And yeah, I won't get too deep into the details, but yeah, we were in Alaska waiting out a storm in Juneau, and we ended up kind of breaking off our marriage over the phone.
Fucking
the boys remember me throwing my wedding ring in the garbage in my hotel room in Juneau. And then it was almost like the next day it popped blue, and we had like 5 days in a row of 12 hours in the field charging lines. And I was having one, to be perfectly honest. I was having like the trip of my life. But I will admit that I was skiing kind of angry, and I was skiing very egocentrically and not for the right reasons. And at the same time, I wasn't sleeping at night. I was laying awake thinking about my failed marriage, or then, if I stopped thinking about that, I'd be thinking about the gnarly shit that I had planned for the next day. I didn't sleep for like 5 days. I believe the 5th Bluebird day is when I made some bad decisions and broke my femur.
Darren and Sage were there on that trip?
Yeah, Darren and Sage were there at that time, yeah.
And it would seem like in terms of whoever was picking their line, it didn't line up, and it was something that you didn't think you were going to hit, but then you decided since everything else was being taken by the other guys, you'd take that line instead of sitting it out?
Yeah, I distinctly remember when we pulled into the zone, I looked at the one wall that I ended up breaking my leg on, and I was like, okay, don't go there. That's way too fucked up. Excuse my language for all you kiddies out there. And then, we ended up skiing some of the other lines on the face. And then light is always an issue, and light was fleeting. So we kind of rushed into the next set of lines, and the other boys picked first, and there wasn't much left. So then I made the call that, oh, yeah, I can go into that NAR. And, I've been having one on this trip, so I'll figure out a way to get down that stuff. And paid the ultimate price, but, it could have been a lot worse. I could have died that day. So I look back at it as like a super positive experience in my life, because not only did I get out of a relationship that I felt was toxic to me, but I also was able to kind of reset my whole life and the whole way I approach not only my ski career, but life in general. And I'm still learning. I'm constantly a student, but learning how to get rid of the ego and ski more for me and ski more what I want to be skiing, and not worry so much about who I'm impressing, but more just worry about doing what I want to be doing, and just trying to constantly learn how to leave the ego behind, because I think honestly at the end of the day it was my ego that got me in trouble that day.
It sounds like there's a ton of things lining up. 5 days of no sleep is going to affect the human body, even if it's in as great a shape as yours was at that point. So a lot of factors come into place. We don't have to relive the crash by any means, but the first thing you say into the radio once you let them know that you're okay is that you knew your femur was broken. At least that's what I heard, which is amazing that you would actually know what bone broke in there.
I felt it break mid-tomahawk. As I was tomahawking, I was like, oh my God, I just broke my femur. And then I knew it was broken well before I even came to a stop. It was a crazy, crazy thing to think in your head, and the pain hasn't hit you at that point yet. Not until you stopped and had time to kind of calibrate. Does the pain finally hit you? But yeah, I distinctly remember tomahawking going, oh my God, I just broke my femur.
And I wish I could say, well, it was there that you made to learn to slow everything down and everything got easier from there. But then in 2012, you have a snowmobile crash and you ruin your quad, and that kind of ruins part of that season for you, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was more, I had so much scar tissue in my quad from breaking my femur, from tomahawking with a broken femur. I tore my muscle apart. And that was actually the hardest part of my recovery. It wasn't the broken bone. It was healing all the scar tissue in my quad muscle. And I did have a crash, pretty light crash off my snowmobile, but I just hit my leg off the side of my sled, and my whole quad muscle just went into full seizure lockup mode. And I was back on crutches for another month. I had to call that season pretty much done. And then the next season, fourth day, just skiing mellow pow, flat light with my buddy Matty Richard, and hit a rock and broke my ankle, broke the talus bone of my ankle. So here I am, I've missed a season, and I'm starting off my next season with a broken ankle. I was extremely frustrated, but I recovered as quick as I could. And once I was able to walk again, I bought a plane ticket down to California and started learning how to fly wingsuits out of airplanes, because I still couldn't ski. But it was a cool experience to learn how to fly wingsuits, and then came back early February, started skiing again, and then went to AK that spring and had an amazing trip.
If I'm in your position, I've had 3 years with injuries, and I do have to let these sponsors know, hey, I'm going to be out another couple months. Hey, I'm going to be out a few months. Do they start questioning that, or are they totally standing by you?
I'll give it to my sponsors for being so awesome during that period of time, because they really stuck with me and they believed in me.
Who stuck with you? We should call them out too.
Yeah, North Face and Vocal Marker, Smith. Those are the primary ones. Whistler Blackcomb, these are the people that stuck with me through that. And, every company is basically the person that you work with at the company. And I had a really strong relationship with all my people that I work with at my brands, and they know the type of person I am. They know how hardworking I am, and they know how devoted and motivated I was to get back at it. And so they believed in me, and they stuck with me. And I proved to them that they had good reason to believe in me. And I came back strong. And I came back with a new mindset, and smarter and stronger, and with a whole new approach. And I think they put a lot of value in that. And yeah, testament to those guys for sticking with me, because it couldn't happen for everyone. It wouldn't happen for everyone in that circumstance. And so I feel fortunate that not only did they stick with me, but they continued to support me full on. And I was able to then just focus on recovery, which is very nice if you're injured, to have your job be get up every day and go to the gym.
Yeah, that's awesome when your sponsors back you like that and you don't have to worry about your next meal.
Yeah, exactly.
In the years to come, is this when you start into the human-powered exploration and getting rid of the helicopters? Because I would think that slows everything down for you. You're not taking 10 runs a day anymore, or 8 runs a day, or however many you were.
Yeah, I mean, last year was basically my first time going full foot power. It's been a huge motivation of mine for the last several years to go foot power, or to at least incorporate foot power trips within my season. But the hardest thing was when I was still committing to doing heli trips, the foot power trip would always get pushed to the back burner because the heli trips were where you could go bag 30 lines on a trip. And then the weather would turn bad, and so we'd cancel the foot power. And I'll give it up to Jeremy Jones. I've had a lot of one-on-one conversations with him, and he was my biggest motivation to get rid of the mechanized style to my skiing and really pushing for that for me, and a huge motivation. And he was basically told me, he's like, Mac, the only way that you can really do this is to like let go of the heli, let go of that whole show completely and just focus your entire energy on going foot power. And he was right. There's only a couple months in the season where you can really get after it and really get things done, especially in the big mountain environment. And if you try and divide up that limited amount of time between multiple different aspects of the sport, you're going to end up just spinning your wheels and not getting anything done. So it was when I finally just let go of the heli and last year just went full foot power that I had more of a aha moment. And this is where I need to be. And this is the future for the next several years for me, is to just slow it down. You know, you're focusing on a few quality lines, but you're doing it in a much more organic way that to me is a lot more rewarding and a lot more memorable.
You know, winding this down a little bit,
yeah,
you've kind of moved into the human-powered aspect of your skiing. And I think as you get older, you're more calculated, you're more thinking adventure. When you're young and you just want to get as many laps in as you possibly can and you're not really thinking about it, well, that totally changes when you get older, and that's where you are now. One thing I do want to ask you about is, what do you think about guys like Julian Carr who take huge cliffs? They're not really stomping their cliff. He does it in a different kind of manner, but I had him on an interview recently and we talked about you, and I was just curious to what your thoughts are on what he's doing out there and hucking himself with no intention of really stomping it in the way that you would, but it's a stomp to him.
Well, yeah, you know, I mean, it's all about perspective, right? And first off, I want to say that Julian Carr is a great friend of mine, and I have nothing but respect for him and what he does. But, you know, he'll be the first to admit that when he's doing huge, massive front flips off cliffs, he's gone into a realm of ski stunt versus just skiing. And he knows that. But at the same time, he's also really good at what he does. And he's obviously super calculated because he's been doing it for a long, long time. And he always pulls it off. And to be perfectly honest, I don't know how you land like he lands and keep your skis on, but he seems to pull it off time and time again. And so nothing but respect for what he does. It's not my style. I'm very much in the realm of you got to land on your feet for it to count. But at the same time, my line of the year last year, I totally backslapped that thing. I was hanging on by a thread. So, you know, yeah, it's all relative and it's all perspective. And Julian has his niche within the sport. He's also a great skier outside of just doing massive front flips. And he's also a smart businessman. So nothing but respect for him. But yeah, we both know that we have incredibly different styles and approach to the mountains.
When he gets talked to a lot, people bring you up, and I'm sure some people might ask you what you think of him. At least I did.
Yeah, and I've got to be out in the mountains with him before and watched him do his thing, and it always blows my mind. And, you know, I feel like the feelings are mutual when he watches me do my thing. So that's what it's all about, you know? It's all about having fun, doing what you want to do, and enjoying yourself out there. And if that's what is doing it for him, then c'est la vie, props to him, and I hope he keeps it up.
Awesome. Well, speaking of stunts, you are a stuntman, I hear, and I want to know what movies you've been in and what the kind of pay you can make being a stuntman, even a Canadian stuntman.
Well, I wouldn't say I'm a stuntman. I've definitely dabbled within stunt work. I've done some commercials for Nissan and various other brands. And, you know, I stunt doubled for Leonardo DiCaprio in the movie Inception.
You totally look like Leo, man.
Oh, yeah, totally. But, you know, this surprises a lot of people is Leo's like 6 feet tall and he's over 200 pounds.
No way.
Yeah, which is surprising to a lot of people. So we are actually like similar size, and with a little bit of coloring in my ginger beard to make me look more like a brown-haired person, and some goggles and a hat and ski gear on, it didn't really matter.
Well, I'm totally going to promote this as I'm interviewing Leo DiCaprio's stunt double.
But yeah, that was pretty lucrative. I wish I'd get more gigs like that because that was really good money and a really good time. I got to hang with Leo on set for a couple weeks. Tom Hardy, too. That guy is mint. Huge props to Tom Hardy. That guy is so sick. Loved hanging out with him. And yeah, it was a really, really cool experience. But those jobs are few and far between. I've gotten a couple calls that have never really panned out since then. But it's pretty specific. It's got to be a movie that wants skiing in it for them to want to call me. And it's got to be filmed in Canada.
Okay. So do you ever talk to JT? Because I know he does a lot of stunt coordination and try to get in on some of his crews.
Yeah, I have. Again, it's all about how it works out. And typically these film companies, if they're filming in the US, they want Americans so that they don't have to get a work visa.
Okay.
And same if they're filming in Canada, they want Canadians so they don't have to get anyone a work visa. And JT primarily does his stuff in the US. So JT and I are friends and we always talk about it. And I'm sure one day the opportunity might come up that we get to do something really cool together. But more what I just want to do with JT now is go to Europe with him and go speed flying.
Is that something you've been doing a bunch of?
It's something I'm starting to dabble into. I've kind of hung up the wingsuit base jumping. I'm still base jumping, but I'm hanging up the wingsuit. I'll fly the wingsuit out of airplanes with my skydive rig. But yeah, I've taken a lot of risk in my life, so I'm trying to minimize in certain areas. And I got to live that dream of human flight in that realm. And now I've started into this realm of speed riding, and it's cool because it incorporates skiing, and so I can use my skiing skills within that realm, and it's more like a skier with a magic cape, as JT would put it, and I like it. Yeah.
Well, awesome, man. Well, it sounds like you've got it all figured out, man. Started as, I would say, a dirtbag, redneck, whatever you want to call it, skier living into the closet, but then you came out of the closet to success. What's a sign of the times? You can come out of that closet and people are going to embrace you with open arms and say, hey, we want you to represent us. And that's what happened to you. And it's all been because of the hard work that you've put in. And I would say your parents bringing you up into a ski life. So I thank you for your time.
Yeah, man.
Your story is awesome. And I can't wait to see what you put together for next year.
Well, thanks. I'm looking forward to finishing out the season strong here. We've got some cool plans for the next couple months. It's going to be a big year for me. I'm kind of running an eternal winter program this year. But yeah, you come out of the closet when you're a young man, and now I've got another beautiful, amazing fiance that she's an incredible woman. And I got to say, I learned a lot from my first marriage, and this one is everything that I need in a woman. And it's important to have a strong partner. And I'm so psyched to have her in my life. So yeah, life is good, man. It couldn't be better, really. I've got a lot of cool things in the works for the years to come, and my sponsors are still super supportive of everything I'm doing, and life is so good, man. I've skied like 100 powder days this year. So
awesome. Well, congratulations on a wonderful fiance. I hate that other one, and I hope I never hear from her again. I'm sure you feel the same way.
Well, she's married to some millionaire now and has a couple kids, so she's fine. She leaves me alone now.
Okay, yeah, good. Thanks for your time, man, and I will talk to you soon.
Right on. Thanks so much, pal.
So that was time with Ian McIntosh, and pretty interesting that he was born to do this. You don't hear about too many kids that are digging pits at 8 years old, that are sitting in guide meetings at 10 years old, and Ian was doing both of those, so he had to make a decision. He quit playing hockey and he focused on getting into the backcountry, and it was a decision that really paid off for him, as it sounds like he wants to be a guide later on in life, but right now he gets to enjoy being the professional skier that he is. And we all look to see what Ian's going to put together every year, and every year we are not disappointed. So I want to thank Ian for that. Next week on the Powell Movement, we are going to talk to Mike Jaquet. Mike was one of the founders of Freeze Magazine, and he just resigned from his role as Chief Marketing Officer of the U.S. Ski and Snowboard Association. So we will talk to Mike about his time on the USSA. We'll talk to him about Freeze, talk to him about his stint at CBS, and all that he's done throughout his career. It should be a great one, and that is on Monday. As always, I need to thank my sponsors. They are evo.com, diecutstickers.com, Sierra at Tahoe Resort, and Spy Optics. Please check out their sites, visit their resorts, buy their stuff. And I want to thank you listeners for tuning into the Powell Movement, and I hope you have a great rest of your week, and I will talk to you next week.